Jujutsu Kaisen is back, and I am not wasting any time at all. So let's just run that fucking intro.
Like, I hate wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. It crushes your spirit.
And before we get further into it, if you do enjoy this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you like the effort that I've put in and you want to support me even further, consider supporting the Patreon. It is $5 a month and it gets you access to all sorts of behind the scenes. Shameless plug over. Gege Akutami is pushing the boat out for this, and I'm extremely excited. This series set in the year 2086, almost the cyberpunk year, almost. Set 68 years after the Cullen Games and the Shinjuku Showdown. Speaking of which, by the way, if you need to brush up on your history of Jujutsu Kaisen, I made a near 3-hour video on the Shinjuku Showdown detailing almost everything that happens within that arc. So check that out. Anyways, we are adventuring into alien territory. Extraterrestrial life, identifying itself as a Samarian, has appeared, accompanied by a mothership known as the Naunaks. That was a tongue twister for me. Carrying nearly 50,000 of its compatriots, they are seeking sanctuary as refugees. Now, this information is definitely worth dissecting a little bit, because first, the name Samarian is definitely a play on the word Sumerian, which was actually a real-life civilization, apparently, with real-life ties to aliens and all that cool shit, but it's also a name of a civilization that's featured within Dandadan, so if you're familiar with Dandadan, you know that kind of ball game. There's a reference there for you. But these guys, the fact that these guys are refugees begs the question, why? Refugees from what? From famine? From drought? From global warming? From war? What is it that made these guys no longer able to inhabit their planet? Is it fucking Sukuna? Is Sukuna on their planet right now? Who fucking knows? Anyway, we are introduced to a few characters here now. This guy, I'm going to guess, is going to be the driving antagonist within the series, based on this just sheer sinister nature, the pose, the tattoos, the third eye, everything kind of very reminiscent of Sukuna. I mean, the dude's even got horns. Like, he does remind me of Sukuna. Now, I'm not going to invest too much into the theory that we're seeing reincarnations left, right, and center here, but I do think it is very noteworthy to mention how the primary storytelling mechanic for Jujutsu Kaisen is a cycle. Everything just constantly repeats itself, and we may very well see instances of that same cycle, that same but different type of thing within this chapter, within this series going forward. Anyway, this dude's questioning about Japan, saying how he was under the impression that America was the strongest country on the planet, which I would also wager is a result of Kenjaku's actions, because remember, Kenjaku incited all sorts of craziness in the US back in chapter 201 of Jujutsu Kaisen. He was informing the president and his guys how different the citizens of Japan were. He was basically telling them their batteries, they're free energy, and you know the US loves themselves some free energy. They love that. They're trying to move on that oil, you know what I'm saying? So I would be willing to bet that this is a ripple effect caused from Kenjaku here. Again, it's only been 2 generations, barely, since everything in Jujutsu Kaisen happened, so there's definitely still ripple effects going on from the previous series of events here. Anyway, our man's here is informed that Japan is now in charge of all diplomatic missions, as it seems there are people within Japan who have similar powers to ours. Now, this shit opens up a fucking metric shit ton of speculatory information for me personally when it comes to the true origin of chaos energy and the true origin of chaos techniques. Did it start on Earth? Was it brought here? Which brings me around to this suspiciously shaped Tengen individual right here, because you're gonna tell me that this motherfucker is not shaped like Tengen? This chapter raises a lot of fucking questions for me personally. Are Jujutsu sorcerers wielding powers that were never from Earth? Fundamentally, their bodies are different, as pointed out many times, especially by Kenjaku to the US, so there's potential that maybe these sorcerers just never even originated on Earth, and maybe they were just planted here by an early scouting ship from the Samarians? Who fucking knows? Anyway, we are officially introduced to Yuka Akotsu and Tsurugi Akotsu, the grandchildren of Maki and Yuta. Now, I'm just going to say it, even if it's not Gege drawing the series, I really like the artwork. I really like the artwork. The color spreads and the designs, I really enjoy. It gives a classic 90s anime manga type of vibe, and I fuck with it. I do. It kind of reminds me of Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit, the way that the clothes are designed. I fuck with it. But you can see these two in Japan with some sort of massive rock standing behind them, which I found the composition of this panel sort of reminiscent of that one major panel from chapter 202 with Kenjaku here. But we get to move a little bit further into the pages here, where we are shown Yuka Akotsu, great-granddaughter of Yuta, who very much loves her granddad. Very, very much. She is definitely granddaddy's girl here. We even do get an appearance of Yuta himself, scars included. We get this shot from afar and then one showing the scars, because it does feel, this does sadden me here, but this also does feel par for the course. Ultimately, this story isn't going to be about the former students as much as we would like it to be, as much as we'd like to see how they're doing and catch up with them. This is more so a story about the future of the Jujutsu world, built upon that pre-existing foundation and pushing it forward, lifting it up, basically. Now, a key component to this chapter is the ring that Yuta is given to Yuka here. Remember, this ring is how Yuta connected to Rika. This ring is now a cursed object. Given the path that Yuta was on, it kind of makes me wonder if he really did take up the mantle of the next Gojo Satoru, the next quote-unquote strongest, but that is a topic for a little bit later down the line. We will get into this. Now, 4 years after he passed this ring on to Yuka, he actually passed away. And this one fucking hits, because if you've been on my channel for a long time, you know damn well Yuta Okatsu is my fucking goat. That's my goat, man. So this is genuinely a bittersweet moment for me. Seeing him pass away due to old age, it does actually make him the second sorcerer in the series to actually do so alongside Kashimo. I mean, obviously, Maki is in there, but I don't know if you can count her as a sorcerer, I suppose, I guess. But ever since Granny Maki passed away, he just seemed to be getting weaker by the day. Yuta wasn't the only one. No one expected Maki to go first. Now, this genuinely, it does make me sad as shit, but all good things must come to an end. Now, I tried to scour this crowd here to see if I could see any familiar haircuts, maybe even some faces or something like that, but sadly, I didn't see anything. It is possible that people's haircuts might have changed with the times. I mean, the same way Yuta and Maki's haircuts have both changed. Anyways, we move forward into a conversation with Yuka's mother, who would be Yuta's daughter, and I'm not gonna lie to you here, Yuta's daughter is not how I imagined her at all. We don't get a name reveal for her, but she does come across very cold and indifferent to Yuka's grief here, and she tells Yuka, you can't wear the ring despite Yuta passed it down to her. That ring is a cursed object registered to the Gojo clan's cursed warehouse. Now, in the epilogue of Jujutsu Kaisen, it's revealed that Yuta actually succeeds Gojo as the head of the clan, and in fact, those two were actually distant relatives, if you remember in JJK 0 that was revealed. Now, Yuta's daughter passes the ring down to Tsurugi after Yuta giving it to Yuka. These names are a little bit confusing. Calling her Yuka and Yuta is just a little bit confusing. Anyway, this causes a little bit of violence between the two siblings, which results in Yuka getting her ass beat by her older brother here. Average sibling type shit, I suppose. Now, one thing I do think is important here to note is Maki's main goal throughout Jujutsu Kaisen was to destroy the Zenin clan and build a clan where she felt Mai could feel that she would belong, and ultimately, I think she ended up doing that. The clan that Yuka and Tsurugi are in now, they might seem cold on the surface level with how Yuta's daughter is acting towards them, but the fact that Yuka and her mother are able to exist within the Gojo clan without facing the same sort of persecution that Maki and Mai did means that ultimately Maki achieved her goal, and that's nice to see. I mean, will it stay that way now that she's gone? Who fucking knows? But it seems that this clan seems to be nice. I mean, it's obviously brutal at the moment, but it seems nice in comparison to what Maki and Mai went through. Anyway, Yuka sets about training to get stronger, and she's going to prove why she's worthy of that ring. Now, this ring is obviously, as I've said, a very important subject, and we will touch on that towards the end of the video. Now, it's here that the series jumps forward again. In the space of a few pages, we've had 3 time skips, which is very on brand for the pacing of Gege right here. It's very insane pacing, I can't lie. It feels like we never fucking left here, to be honest with you. Now, we were introduced to this guy and this kid who remain unnamed for pretty much the entire chapter. They are playing some games, and the older guy asks this kid if that's all they do nowadays, and the kid complains that it's unfair because his parents just never let him play games anymore, which is really sad, blah blah blah, unfortunately. Now, the first thing that you should notice here is the Cursed Talisman stickers that are all over the place, very creepy. They will be important later, we will touch on those, but there's also this little book here, which reminds me of something here on this panel, and then apparently a guy in my Discord was telling me that this looks like Gone Freaks in a reference, and then there's also a Shanks and Luffy reference right here. So Iwasaki and Gei are throwing up the references left, right, and center. These two talk about how should this kid really be playing this game considering all the death within the game, to which the kid says it's totally normal. Now, I think this is very, very par for the course within the world of Jujutsu. Death is like second nature. It happens all the time. It's cruel, it's unforgiving, but most importantly, it's normal for this world. It's very, very normal. It's very commonly accepted that people are just gonna die, like, bam, you know? But I think the more sinister implication here is that this guy's essentially getting this kid to unknowingly kind of agree with his death. He's basically like, oh, so if you find death is normal, then you probably won't mind if this shit happens to you in real life. He's kind of coercing this kid into his own death here, which is kind of spooky. But it's here that we get into the real mission of what's going on, because Tsurugi and Yuka arrive in Kyoto to investigate recent cases of Japanese citizens being abducted and used as energy resources, even so far as abducting children, as we just saw. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if all of this sounds familiar, it fucking should, because Kenjaku at one point was in the USA talking about this very thing, encouraging the US to invade Japan for this very purpose during the Culling Games. And it is here that we are introduced to Marulu Val Vol Yelvori, or Maru for short. I'm so glad they gave him a short name, because there is no fucking way I was calling him all of that shit. That's crazy for me. I just, there's no way. It took me so many takes to get that correct. I just want you to know that. But now you might be sat here thinking, yo, it's the guy from the fucking beginning. But I'm inclined to believe that this is not the same guy from the beginning. It's actually, because later on in the chapter, Maru reveals that he has a younger twin brother. Now, I believe it's actually this guy here at the beginning of the chapter that we're seeing. And the reason I think that is because we get to see two different color schemes. I mean, we've already had official artwork for Maru himself. And then obviously the official color scheme for this guy, the tattoos are more linear, whereas Maru's are more circular. And then obviously the color schemes are different. So I believe that we got to see these brothers in action without it being revealed, which I kind of like the way that Gege's sort of doing this. Like, he's bringing characters in but not really revealing them. I like that. I'm a big fan of that. Anyways, the next couple of panels are mostly filled with exposition, explaining how cursed energy is unique to most Japanese people. It's the result of negative emotions, and for a small amount of the chapter, Maru basically serves a sort of double purpose, help deliver exposition to possible new readers of Jujutsu Kaisen, and then also act as this gormless alien, unprivy to any sort of information that would be otherwise common to a lot of other folk within the series here. Example 1, Maru questioning Tsurugi just what exactly a curse user is and what the difference is between a sorcerer. I'm going to let the exposition slide. It's chapter 1 of a new series, and obviously Gege wants this to be a potential entry point for new people into Jujutsu Kaisen, so I'll let it slide. I'm okay with it. It's fine. It's not crazy. It's not in your face. It just is what it is. Now, from the first couple of panels here, I absolutely fucking love the dynamic between these three. It's very reminiscent of Yuji, Nobara, and Megami. Suguri and Yuka serving as Nobara and Megami respectfully, and Maru serving as Yuji, especially these two snapping at Maru when he's explaining the difference between a sorcerer and curse user. However, Maru's goal here is to find out what kind of power the humans are rocking with, and also if they can coexist with the Samarians here. Now, throughout this chapter, I get the feeling that there is a little bit more to these guys than meets the eye. Maru's intentions do seem pure, but this guy at the beginning of the series, he's got a real sinister fucking vibe about him, and I'm wondering if the Earth will cooperate willingly, or if they don't, they go to phase 2, which is just straight up invasion. Anyways, Yuka and Suguri both get bored of Maru's yapping here and decide to ditch him, which ultimately leads to Maru sulking about it. Now, these few panels are super fucking interesting to me because, one, Maru being upset here is mostly because he's deflated what Earth has to offer here, what humanity's like. He's looking to find out if this world is able to coexist with his own in a way, and he's only being shown two folk who are selfish and don't really give a fuck about what they've done, and they also don't think they've done anything wrong. Two, Yuka turning up and telling Maru not to cry comes across very cold and callous, much like her own mother was to her earlier on in the chapter. But not only this sequence also reminded me a lot of the words that Megami told Yuji: we're Jujutsu sorcerers, we are not heroes. And now, this world they've been raised in and trained in, it's brutal, it's unforgiving, and if cursed energy is in fact the result of the Samarians arriving on Earth, like I mentioned earlier, then Maru here would simply be suffering the results of a society that his kind, his race, kind of helped form, which I find weirdly poetic. If this is the case, that it turns out that cursed energy and all that stuff has come from off-world, I'll be very interested in that. Anyways, Yuka takes Maru for some food, to which Maru acts like a total alien and not a very discreet or in disguise alien, not very undercover at all. And Yuka and Maru continue the conversation where Maru guesses that both Suguri and Maru are actually indeed siblings, and Maru explains the situation that happened between her and Suguri, with him now being in possession of the ring that Yuta had actually passed down to her. Now, it dawned on me as I was reading through this again that this ring might actually have become the new symbol of the quote-unquote strongest. This ring might be why Yuka says only the best sorcerers can have it. Yuta's ring may now actually just be acting like a future Six Eyes in like the future era here. Instead of being born with them, it's passed down to the quote-unquote strongest. Remember, one of Jujutsu, well, again, I'm going to keep reminding you throughout this video, but one of Jujutsu Kaisen's core storytelling mechanics is the cycle. Like, it's literally like a cycle. Things repeat in this world, and even if it's not in the same cycle that Yuji broke at the end of the original series, it may still be a cycle nonetheless. It could be a cycle that's like the same but different type shit. Anyways, this chapter goes out of its way to show us the sibling rivalry between Suguri and Yuka, Yuka. But under that rivalry, Yuka still grieves for Yuta. You can see little bits of emotion seeping through. Anyways, Maru suggests that they complete this mission together since Suguri has left them. And even though Maru isn't supposed to interfere at all, Yuka reminds him of this and then says, you know, clearly, I didn't say I wouldn't do it though, you know, if you want to help, you're more than likely. And I'm not going to be honest with you, this gave a very heavy we cheated vibes from Yuta when he fought Sukuna. The apple does not fucking fall far from the tree here at all, which I just love. I really enjoying this series already. I know we're only one chapter deep and it's like 58 pages, but I'm here for it, man. There has been a fire lit in my soul for this. But from here, Maru and Yuka set out to complete the mission of finding out just what or who is causing these disappearances of the Japanese citizens. And after some searching, they come across a barrier in which Yuka suspects anyone who just so happens to follow a particular path will end up being taken. And Yuka figures this out. It gets Maru all sorts of excited. And she boastfully says, you know, Yuka says, any window worth their soul could figure something out like this. Now, if you're a bit confused about this, the term window, it's something that's not been brought up in a long time here. A window is explained in chapter 6 of Jujutsu Kaisen. They're not sorcerers, but they do have the ability to see cases and they are sanctioned by Jujutsu High. Now, it's at this point that Suguri appears again, having figured out the same shit that Yuka and Maru have just figured out. And again, this sets Maru off because Suguri just seemingly doesn't remember having left Maru behind with Yuka, which is quite funny. But this is where Maru starts to reveal that he's actually got a younger twin, as I mentioned earlier. He mentioned that him and his brother are often at odds, and apparently due to Maru being very clumsy, that pisses him off, apparently. Now, this small piece of dialogue, it reminded me a lot of what Gojo says in chapter 236. While it's not the same, it's more so the composition of the panel and the apparent intent behind the words. And again, it also reminded me of Yuji and Sukuna's conversation that, once again, ultimately sort of boils down to the two trying to gain an understanding of their situation, essentially. Now, Maru tells Yuka he didn't want Suguri and Yuka to end up like him. And it's here that Yuka just says, maybe you should just stop projecting how you think siblings should be because you didn't get along with yours. Now, ultimately, this does shock Maru and makes him wonder if Yuka is even capable of subtle emotions. But again, this is the world she's grown up in. To him, this probably feels strange. And I do find it ironic that the alien in the conversation is acting more human than the humans themselves. But as I said, she grew up in this world. She grew up in the strongest clan as a Jujutsu sorcerer. It's a different world for them and how they handle everyday stuff. Their emotions are just handled differently, as we already know from previous stories here. Now, Suguri comes back and they try to close off the area and stop more folks wandering down here. However, this idiot goes running right down there, right through the tape that clearly says, keep out, but I guess signs can't fucking stop you if you can't read. There's a joke in there about not being able to read and being a Jujutsu Kaisen fan. I'm a better man than that and I'm not going to make it. However, this kid fucks up because a massive set of hands come just peering out of the shadows to come and snatch him up. And the first thing I thought of when I saw this was this panel from when the US invaded the Color Games in chapter 209. But also, the hands also reminded me a lot of Sukuna's flame hands. I don't know why. There's just lots of stuff here that's just reminded me of like earlier Jujutsu Kaisen moments. It's really got the fucking fire going in me. I hope you can tell. Make sure you like and subscribe, by the way. And also check out my other Kagurabachi videos while you're here if you really like me just yapping. Because these two series right now have got me by the balls. Anyways, Suguri notes, however, whoever is making this barrier has to be a top-tier case user to implement spatial transference into a barrier technique. Now, I am more than happy to be corrected by someone in the comments right here, but I am not sure if we've seen a barrier use this kind of thing before. Again, let me know in the comments below. Could be wrong on that. But this little barrier transference thing did remind me of the Phantom Troop exploring the Haley's hideout in Hunter x Hunter. Very, very reminiscent of that. Like, you step into certain things like a trap, you just get yoinked off. Now, Suguri tells Maru and Yuka that he's going after that kid, and he tells them to report back to Usami. Now, if you haven't realized it yet, Usami is the name of not only this guy here, but also a guy that Gege mentioned in a volume extra. And other than Kusakabe, he's also the strongest grade 1 sorcerer. He never gets actually fully introduced within the story. It could be just a complete and utter coincidence, but given how they don't really look alike, it could just be like Gege, like, maybe I should reuse that name. Who fucking knows? Anyway, Suguri goes after this kid, declaring that he is going to prove he's stronger than Yuka. Now, this is very interesting to me, because despite now twice in this chapter, we've seen Yuka get beaten by Suguri, and here declare how strong he is. Yuka still somehow feels he needs to prove it, and we will touch into that towards the end of the chapter, because It's very good, and I do really like these parallels that are being set up between the two. Now, Suguri gets taken. All that gets left behind here is a sword, and Yuka deduces that this is because the sword is a cursed tool. The barrier is repelling people with too much cursed energy. Now, I am almost certain that this is a reference to Yuta's immense cursed energy. If Suguri has no cursed energy, it stands to reason that Yuka is taken from her grandpa, who was overflowing with it. Potentially, she has a shit ton of cursed energy, and that's why she wasn't taken. But it means that Suguri is actually heavily restricted, or at the very least seems to be, given his immense strength. He doesn't have any cursed energy according to Yuka here. But Yuka and Maru talk a little bit more about Suguri's disappearance, and it's here that Yuka seemingly just has a total lack of care toward her brother. It just rears its head again, and she doesn't have any motivation to even attempt to go and rescue him. This angers Maru. Now, I mentioned earlier how he reminded me of Gojo and Yuji, but here he reminds me of Yuji and Sukuna. Because Maru shouts at Yuka, who's looking mildly concerned as he tells her, if Suguri gets killed, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life, and we can't let that happen. Suguri might have a change of heart one day, but if he dies now, that'll never happen. And I think it's here that Yuka snaps back and tells him not to push his ideals onto her. And I think you can see that side of Yuji coming out in this conversation with that clash of passionate ideals, but you can also see that one side of Sukuna popping in too, because Maru says, if somebody can't live up to my ideals, I'm the one who gets hurt, not them, and I might end up humiliated. And this sentence right here heavily reminded me of Sukuna telling Kashimo that if people can't grasp his nature, then that's their problem. I know it's like not the same sort of context, but it's like reminiscent. It's like, ooh, flashbacks of this moment right here. Now, I know I've mentioned this obviously a few times, but it does genuinely feel like there's like a cycle going on again. There's quite a few parallels between here and more people within the series and more people within the past, and I'm enjoying this. I am. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm enjoying this, genuinely. However, this conversation continues chartering more into that Itadori territory, because he says, if you're going to give up on your ideals, then do it after you've been hurt and humiliated. But I haven't given up on my brother, and don't you dare give up on yours either. Now, instead of having a totally normal reaction and taking this information in and deciding to go and save her brother, Yuka decides she's going to go punch his face in. And I personally fucking love that. I love that. I genuinely love that. That has to be the most Maki-coded sentence that she has said so far, and I fucking love that. I like how there's shades of previous characters just coming out in these two. I fucking love that. Anyways, we do switch over to the situation with Suguri and his unnamed case user, who is now just holding him hostage. We can see his case talismans all over the gaff, as I mentioned earlier, but it is also revealed that this area where Suguri is being held is right by Jujutsu High, which will be the Kyoto branch, which is good to know. We could potentially see some more Jujutsu sorcerers, maybe his backup here, who fucking knows. I doubt it. Maybe even some old faces, Yuji Itadori, wink wink, nudge nudge, who fucking knows. But this case user goes on to inform the Suguri that aliens have indeed arrived on Earth, and Suguri is not having any of this shit, by the way. I just want you to know, this dude, I find that absolutely stellar. This dude fights cases and all sorts of paranormal shit, but aliens is where he draws the line. It's very, very Dandadan type vibes here, which I love. Case user then tells us that this incident has been declared a special great incident on par with the attack by Ryoma and Sukuna 68 years ago. Now, Suguri gives us a little bit of exposition, saying Sukuna is the monster who caused the ground zero at the inhuman Makio. Now, this is obviously a reference to Sukuna just fucking nuking Shinjuku with the fire arrow. But let's not also forget Gojo, who also launched the nuke of his own fucking making out there. Now, I didn't talk about this at the beginning of the chapter. There is a mention to the Inspector General here. Now, back in chapter 199, there was an extra that Gege left at the end of the chapter called the Jujutsu Memorandums, in which he explains the roles of the Inspector General, and he is basically just the head of Jujutsu Society, which means Jujutsu Society is still going strong and may have even potentially improved. After all, Gojo did kill all of the higher-ups back in chapter 261, and he mentioned that he'd leave Principal Gakuganji in charge. Now, I can't imagine that Gakuganji is still alive. If he is, what the fuck? So, like Maki creating a clan where Mai can belong, it's potentially hopeful that Gojo actually achieved his dream of tearing down the old Jujutsu Society and raising up strong allies, which genuinely, that's nice. I think that's nice. Seeing the fruits of the labor of the hard-fought battles is nice, because I feel like with Jujutsu Kaisen, it's kind of one of those things of change doesn't just happen when you win the battle. It's a generational thing. It has to be paid forward consistently. It's nice, and I like that Gege is sort of continuing that trend here, and he's showing somewhat guess, implying the fruits of those labors. Anyways, the case user explains how since the Kyoto Paranormal Security Treaty was enacted, that's a tongue twister by the way, all diplomacy with aliens has been left up to Japan. The case user believes that these aliens will invade and start a war. Now, as I mentioned, I am very skeptical as to what's going on with these guys so far, because Maru doesn't seem to be some sort of advanced invading force, but obviously his brother and the guy at the beginning of the chapter have a very sinister vibe about them. But it is here where we get our first callback to Yuji, Gojo, Yuta, Nobara, Maki, and Megami. And honestly, Gege and Iwasaki choosing not to show their faces only serves to just give us more closure that their story is sort of done. It's done and dusted, and we'll probably more than likely only hear of them in passing. I genuinely am not holding my hopes up for any of these characters to appear within the series, and if we do, it'll probably be flashbacks where we don't get to see their face, because that just seems to be the vibe that Gege's going for here. He's trying to just let us know their story's done, that's it, it's over with, it's done, it's time to focus on the future. Now, it is also revealed that that treaty that I just mentioned here was actually brought about 68 years ago, right after the Cullen Games had ended. Again, if you need a flashback and you need a revamp on that Jujutsu Kaisen lore, go watch my fucking 3-hour-long video on the Shinjuku Showdown. It's very worth the wait. I poured a piece of my soul into that video. Quote, Satoru Gojo and Yuji Itadori put a stop to it, but do you know of anyone that extraordinary as them in Japan nowadays? Now, this does give us some information. One, Yuji and Gojo being the only ones mentioned here means a fair amount of folks who fought against Sukuna have even been forgotten to time, or narratives were shifted, maybe through some political means within the world where they just didn't get the recognition that they deserved. I don't fucking know, but again, you have to remember that whole event was being live streamed. Maybe Gojo and Yuji were the ones that were seen the most, so they look like they put the most work in. Who fucking knows? Two, the case user noting how there's no one extraordinary as those two anymore sort of implies that there has been a time of somewhat peace, and there has been for some while now, or at least to me, it does imply that, because the case user does note how weak sorcerers have become. Now, I'm going to glaze a little bit here. I know I've been glazing for like the past 20 plus minutes here, but I think this is a good way to sort of root the scale of power within the series here. It's already pre-established that cases and case users' powers ebbed and flowed with the birth of Gojo, so I imagine the death of both him and Sukuna, there might not have been many cases flying around after those things. The cases might have been scared of Sukuna's presence or scared of Gojo's presence, resulting in a decreased need for sorcerers potentially. I mean, it's also worth mentioning that even if there are cases still floating about, they might all just be staying in the area of Shinjuku or even Ground Zero, because remember, Maki mentioned back in one of the chapters towards the end of the series that cases are only appearing in Tokyo right now. Anyways, this case user tells Suguri he's quitting on becoming a human trafficker. He's actually just going to make one last sale, which is actually Suguri himself. This dude's trying to get out. He's trying to retire. He's trying to pull the Heisenberg, but it's not going to fucking work. And we actually get to see the kid from the beginning of the chapter who ran into the barrier, and they've both been sealed up and packaged, ready to sell like a packet of crisps here, along with multiple other people, as the case user starts beating the fuck out of Suguri. Now, while this is happening, the door gets kicked in, and it is none other than Maru and Yuka who have come to save Suguri, and we do get a little lore drop for Maru's case technique. Now, before we get into that, I do want to point out that twice now, Maru has stumbled before talking about either cased energy or techniques, which makes me wonder if the Samarians have like a different name for them. Maybe, potentially. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Maybe they have different names for this stuff. But his case technique allows him to bring Yuka into the world of harmony. Whatever the fuck that means, I don't know. It allows him to find her equal, which I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was a very interesting case technique. Very convenient technique, but I will let it slide. It's chapter 1 of Gege. I'll let him cook. I do trust in the power system. I'll let him cook with it. Anyways, Suguri gets free and decides that they are gonna stop the case user. But no. Yuka immediately throws hands and makes good on her promise. Now, what I absolutely love about this sequence of events is, one, I was complete and utter shock that Yuka was not taking the piss and was indeed ready to go and throw hands. She was only here to throw hands with Suguri. I love that. Two, the fact that Suguri seems completely and utterly unfazed by this occurrence. I mean, obviously we saw Yuka throwing hands with Suguri earlier in the start of the chapter. It makes me think that this has become a regular thing of just infighting like this. Like, randomly, Yuka will just start throwing hands. Anyway, this fight goes on, and I'm just gonna say it. Holy fuck, this artwork is clean. It is genuinely refreshing, to be honest with you. Seeing the world that I know and love so much be represented in such a different and unique, fresh artwork style, it's nice, it's refreshing, and I'm genuinely enjoying it. But these two throw hands, and Yuka loses, and then marvels at how strong Suguri is, but then instantly snaps back into business and is then trying to fight the Chaos User. As I said earlier, I fucking love these three and their dynamic. It's just chaos. It's just utter chaos. However, it is time for Yuka to shine, showing off her technique, Savage Jaw Strike, which envelops her hands in chaos energy that resembles Tiger's. And as she gets into it with the Chaos User, who turns out to have a discount version of Boogie Woogie, or the flying Raijin from fucking Naruto, I guess. These talisman are just dotted all around the floor, and it allows him to just teleport where he has a talisman. Again, artwork and choreography is so nice and refreshing, but Suguri gets sick of waiting, and he takes the Curse Tool from Maru, which is a sword called Honoyagi. And now this allows for sparks to be generated within the scabbard to infuse into the blade. Now Suguri then unleashes the familiar Bato sword drawing. Now I'm just going to headcanon here for a second and say that this sword is the Curse Tool of Miwa or Kusakabe. Who fucking knows? Don't know who, but much like how Nanami's Curse technique infused into his Curse Tool, I'm headcanoning that this is either Kusakabe or Miwa doing the exact same thing with Bato's sword drawing, but for this sword specifically. But this Curse User does get hit with the double whammy from Yuka and Suguri here. We get this nice little moment between Suguri and Yuka, where Suguri tells Yuka that she's gotten stronger, and so too he'll work even harder so that he can give her the ring back. Now, rightfully, this leaves her a little bit confused, because this rounds off the chapter starting to flesh out Suguri a little bit more, where Yuka is trying to prove that she's strong enough to bear the ring, to carry that ring. Suguri is trying to prove that he's strong enough to not need it at all, which I really fucking like, this little parallel between them. They're both working towards the same goal, but in opposite ways almost. I am extremely excited to see how Gege continues to grow these two further, and I do think it is worth going back, if you haven't already. I do think it's worth going back to read chapters involving Yuta and Maki respectively. It's very, very worth it, because these chapters hit a little bit harder, and you get a little bit more sense of the characterization for these characters after hitting that reread. Ultimately though, Suguri's goal is to hold on to the ring until the clan head basically tells him, you don't need that ring, you're strong enough, you don't need it, you don't need the Tawara. Now I do wonder if we will see the emergence of Rika at all, or if she passed along with Yuta, making good on his promise back in Jujutsu Kaisen 0 to die together. It could be that the presence of her cursed energy is warding off spirits, similar to how Gojo's cursed energy kept spirits away from B5 in Shibuya. Who knows? Anyways, this case here is not done yet, and he is determined to get his payback, unleashing a barrier technique. Now, I am not sure if this is like just a simple barrier technique, or if this is a domain and like this whole room is like a semi-domain, but the way it's shown doesn't seem to be a domain. There doesn't seem to be any big activations of it, but who knows how these chaos techniques have evolved over the past 60 odd years. The Chaos User mentions how he's already secured a buyer, and it's at this point that Maru's third eye opens and it blasts this Chaos User with something that is unclear right now, but what I will say is this eye reminds me of Gojo's Unlimited Void, specifically from the anime. Now, when he says that he's secured a buyer, Maru's eye opens, and that's when Maru decides to take action. Now, given the uncertainty of the Samarians right now, did Maru strike this dude because this guy was about to unknowingly reveal Maru's position, and potentially he and his race were the buyers? Or did Maru just act because, oh no, the kids are in danger, I gotta save them real quick? Who fucking knows? Let me know what you think in the comments below. But it's here that Yuka and Suguri realize that they are in the presence of an alien, and Maru also just realizes that he fucked up big time by revealing that. Now, I am extremely happy to see Jujutsu Kaisen back. Like, as you can tell, this is a 36-minute video right now. I haven't cut it down, I haven't edited it, but it's a long video right now. This series fills me with an insane amount of passion. I can't even fucking describe it. But anyways, that is everything from me. Be sure to like and subscribe. Maybe support the Patreon. It is $5 a month. Gets you access to all sorts of behind-the-scenes stuff. And maybe check out my other videos. If you're into Kagurabachi, go check that out. I cover that every week, same way I will be with Jujutsu Kaisen here. And as always, I'll catch you guys all in the fucking next one. Much love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.